It's Michalina from Coffee That Gives a Pack. Where's my mic?
Here? Nah. No, I probably look like I had some kind of medal on. That looks silly.
Tell me you brew coffee differently than others without telling me that you brew coffee differently than others. I'll go first. Well, at least I know how to make that coffee in exactly the same way next time. Because consistency. Love, love, love. Without it, coffee would be quite disappointing very, very often. There is nothing worse than going to a new cafe for the first time. You get the coffee and it tastes amazing, so you really want to go there another time. And you come back, you order the coffee, you have very high expectation, and the coffee doesn't taste even close to what you've tasted when you were there first time. That makes me very sad. That's why making the coffee according to recipe is essential to keep the coffee tasting exactly the same each time you make it. That's what baristas should be doing. That's how you win the regular customers. But you don't necessarily have to work in the coffee shop to watch this channel. So maybe you aim to recreate the taste of the coffee that you had in the coffee shop that you like. Or you bought those beans and you've made a coffee with them. You love the taste of it and you know that for 100% this is what you want to drink every day. Or maybe you know that you have good beans, but the coffee that you make with them does not taste quite as you know that it might. One of the elements that you could be checking during the coffee preparation is to weighing the coffee and water. Keep on checking your dose. No jokes, knowing how much coffee and water you use is a game changer. Measuring ingredients for meal preparation is very common practice. Why not apply it to the coffee preparations as well? As you know, checking the weight of the coffee and water is not the only important things when making the coffee. Here, you can check the other tips that I was giving you so far when it comes to making the coffee as a pro. Same reasons apply today. Weighing the coffee and checking how much water you use can only get you closer from achieving the best balanced cup of coffee out of the beans that you bought. From this episode, you've learned that water is just as important ingredient of your coffee preparation as your beans. So weighing the ingredients applies to both coffee and water to make sure that the coffee at the end doesn't taste too watery or surprisingly too bitter, or to make sure that it's fully extracted. You need to find a balance between the amount of water and coffee. To make it easy and very nicely organized, I'm gonna divide that matter into two categories: filter coffees and espresso style coffees. So for filter coffees, you are responsible for measuring both coffee and water. You are the one who physically needs to transfer the water from tap or from filter, what I recommend more, into your kettle or into the container that holds the water in the filter machine, because whether that is a French press or filter machine or AeroPress, it all applies here. So for that, you need scales. You get a coffee out of your cupboard, you prepare your water, and according to Specialty Coffee Association, the best results in achieving the nicely balanced beverage is to use 6 grams of coffee over 100 grams of water. Obviously, some of the brewing equipment that you use are designed to brew a little bit more coffee, so you just have to do a little bit of math and you adjust that proportion to the equipment that you use. Let it be your starting point. If you taste your coffee and you think that it could use a little bit more coffee, feel free to add a few beans next time, or if it's too watery, just adjust the amount of water accordingly. Simple as! But if you are a proud owner of a coffee machine, you know that it's not that easy to have a control over how much water you use for your coffee. How the coffee machine works, they pump the water out from a bigger tank or container or a boiler that it's quite often installed inside the coffee machine, that it's built in, and you don't have that easy access to that container, so you can't really adjust that water easily. Coffee machines are most often designed to give you a certain amount of water in a certain time, and you don't really have an option to change it this quickly. There are machines that allow you to change the settings. You don't necessarily have to want to do it, or you might not have time. The coffee machines are designed to stop the coffee extraction after a certain time, or after it gave you a certain amount of water, or it just waits for you to stop it. To have some kind of idea of how much water that coffee machine gives you, you can just simply put an empty cup underneath the group and you press the button for starting the coffee extraction without handle on it, so the water pours directly into your cup, and then you weigh it. If you did that, it would be very clear for you very quickly that the rule of 6 grams of coffee over 100 grams of water wouldn't really apply here. You probably wouldn't get more water out of your group than 80 or 100 grams. In that case, we would have to adjust our coffee amount into somewhere near 5 grams of coffee, and you know that it's not enough. Coffee machines come with baskets like this one, and they usually hold around 14 up to 21 grams. So 5 grams would be definitely not enough coffee. It would be just a mess, and very little to none extraction would happen. You know that the basket needs to be filled almost to the top to make the coffee tasting as it should taste. And I said almost. Please do not ever fill your basket all the way to the top. I mean, after you tamp it, it shouldn't be all the way to the edges. It's just no good. You need a little bit of space between coffee and the screen in the coffee machine, so there's enough room for water and pressure to help with the extraction, just never to the top. So to sum it up, in this case, you maybe don't have an access to adjusting the water amount, but you can play with the amount of coffee you use, and each gram matters. Now imagine this, you have great beans. You ground it accordingly to the brewing method. Method chosen based on the roast profile. You pay attention to the time of extraction, but it all doesn't matter for you because the coffee tastes still bitter or it's under extracted. One day you manage to taste some orange and raspberries in your espresso shot, but the day after it not only doesn't remind any of the flavors from the day before, but it's just so intense that you have to dilute it to even be able to drink it. And maybe that is because you were inconsistent in weighing your coffee and water, or you didn't do it at all. So if you make an espresso shot and you used too much coffee, there's a big chance that your coffee will taste bitter. It will be definitely over extracted in a certain amount of time that you desire to make a coffee with. It just gives you a few grams of burnt as hell liquid. Or if on the other side you didn't have enough coffee in there, your time of extraction will be much shorter, and in a certain amount of seconds it just gives you so much coffee that it's very watery and very sour, doesn't give you any sweetness. You don't want that. With the French press, too much water, the coffee is too watery. With not enough water, the coffee is not fully extracted because there's not enough room for all the compounds to dissolve into. Not very satisfying. And as easy as it usually is to measure how much water you are using, because some of the vessels or the containers, they have lines or some other ways of just giving you an idea of how much water you need to pour into it. It's not always accurate though, but it's definitely not as easy and obvious for coffee. Sometimes you get an idea of somewhere close to the amount of coffee you can use because you can find some suggestions of measuring your coffee in cups or teaspoons. But me, Halina, is not a fan of volumetric measurement, and I'm gonna tell you why. Each coffee, especially when we divide them basing on the roast profile, is different. They weigh differently. Their density is different. Look,
Very simple test. I took a light roast and dark roast, and I wanted to fill the little white cup all the way to the top just to see if volume equals weight. With light roast, 94 grams, and the dark roast should be lighter by a definition. Let's see. 74 grams.
And what if I needed 3 teaspoons of coffee? Well, not only the shape of the beans, the density, the roast profile is different, but also there's so many tablespoons. They all have their own capacity, their shapes, and it's impossible to tell which teaspoon is holding how much.
Again, 2 different coffees measured with the same tablespoon. This time I started with dark roast, and it gave me exactly 20 grams. With the light roast, it turned out to measure 23 grams.
Moreover, there are people downstairs, they can see me. The same volume of fine grind coffee doesn't weigh the same as the same volume of coarse coffee. Maybe it's not much, but the difference is there. I am getting a little bit dramatic, I know. So that's not accurate, let alone just guessing how much water and coffee you use every time you make coffee. Are you the genius who can tell the exact amount of water and coffee that you use just by judging it visually? If you are, I want to know you. If you are able to very quickly tell how much water and coffee and just anything really you use without the scales, I want to meet you and test that skill, because it's very much impossible thing to do for me. So yes, I am taking the scales everywhere where I go with me to measure the coffee, because I know that every single gram matters, and maybe it is a little, but hey, are we here to make a perfect cup of coffee or not? Make your coffee taste consistently good. Peace and coffee.